Hal still wakes up every day struggle with his own imposter syndrome, and those voices that harken back to, me riding my bike around Nashville in the 70s with no friends, still, it's amazing how those experiences shape you, Here I am, just turned 60, and there are days I feel like that kid on the bike with no friends. But I'm riding for the other kids behind me that feel the same way.
My name is Buddy Teaster, President and CEO of Souls for Souls, and host of the Repurpose podcast. Each episode offers candid conversations with business leaders and entrepreneurs who share the ups and downs, wins and challenges they faced along the way, and how they learned to overcome them. These are real stories of real people going from tailspin to tailwind, and I hope you enjoy this conversation. Hey everybody, I want to welcome Hal Cato to the Repurpose podcast. He is sort of a Nashville legend, so we're thrilled to have him here. But maybe, Hal, we can start with just a little bit of your background and how you got to where you are now.
Well, where do you want me to jump in? I'm one of the unicorns running around town, one of the native Nashvillians that,
Already that's a good place to start.
I remember Nashville in the 70s and 80s and 90s and every decade. This town really shaped me in so many ways. I kind of, was one of those kids that grew up feeling like they could fit in anywhere, but didn't belong anywhere either. Mm-hmm. It was just, and we can get into that later too, because I think that's shaped a lot of my own leadership style. But graduated from Franklin Road Academy here in Nashville, went away to college in Mississippi at Ole Miss, came back with the determination that I was going to get into real estate. That was going to be,
really?
I went and got my real estate license like 2 weeks after graduating and started off in commercial real estate and quickly realized that was not who I was. And to fulfill myself while I was doing that job, because my job was to walk around and knock on doors and try to convince people to move. So I said, I got to do something because I'm dying here. And so I started delivering Meals on Wheels for senior citizens, and loved it. And it made me think of my grandmother, who was really instrumental in shaping who I am today. But it got to be, my jobs got pretty busy. And so I started recruiting others to take my Meals on Wheels route. And that one Meals on Wheels route, I was watching one night NBC Nightly News, and they were doing a story on this new nonprofit in Atlanta called Hands-On Atlanta that was taking young adults who were wanting to get involved in the community but didn't have time, and creating episodic volunteer opportunities for them. I was like, we need a Hands-On Nashville. And so that Meals on Wheels route turned into Hands-On Nashville as a very frustrated 24, 25-year-old who wasn't, fulfilled. And that was when I fell in love with that there was a whole career opportunity in giving back and touching other people's lives. And it's just shaped my trajectory ever since. That episode, knocking on doors, trying to convince people to break their lease, I met a woman who was starting a new company called Corporate Childcare, and ended up going into that field. Was one of their early employees and spent 11 years building childcare centers all over the country and even the world.
Was that kind of a real estate piece too?
It was a real estate piece. I was partnering with big companies, hospitals, Fortune 500 employers who wanted to offer childcare as a benefit to their employees. And so I would set up an on-site program, and it was a lot of fun. We went public. We were acquired. I moved to London for a few years and ran their UK biz dev work over there. It's now the biggest childcare company in the world. Came back here in 2001 and decided to just make a hard 180 and take what I had fallen in love with, but it was always done on the side, so the nonprofit piece, and make that career. And that's when I went to Oasis Center, and sort of the rest is history.
Well, no. That is not going to do. There's a lot more to say about what came after you coming back. I didn't know about the London piece. So you come back, and Oasis, look, sort of what started this whole podcast is this tailspin to tailwind idea. And we're going to hear there's a theme of when you come in, kind of what are some of the things that you tackle. So what was it like? Nashville in 2001 was still kind of a small town. I mean, I'm still new to Nashville after 13 years, but I hear things about that time that make me think, what would it be like? So what was Oasis like trying to serve those kids at that time?
Yeah, well, Oasis Center, it was, it was this just sort of, it was the alternative nonprofit in town that prided itself on sort of being anti-establishment and down with the man, and we're not going to do it that way, and don't bring and force any rules on us. And it was just so counter to everything that I've been doing, is helping lead a publicly traded company from London, from an office in London. But I quickly fell in love with the people, and more importantly, I fell in love with the young people who were coming through that door, because I saw myself in them. Nashville, running a nonprofit in Nashville in early 2000s was, I'm going to be honest, probably not that much different than it is today, even though the tools are a lot more sophisticated that we had today. It's always been a relationship-driven business, a business that's rooted in impact and in storytelling and being able to connect and build trust and all of those things that are important, 25, 26 years later. Nashville was much easier. We didn't have the affordability issues we have now. You could literally get anywhere in town in 10 minutes. So the challenges that we're facing are at a whole other scale, but the way we go about it and sort of the fundamentals of success, I think, are very, very similar.
When you came to Oasis, it was already existing, so you're stepping into a situation. What was that like? Was it things are going great? Was it
No.
I was kind of leading you there.
I sort of have a theme of walking into organizations that are have so much potential, but maybe just a little lost in the weeds. And it has a strong, powerful mission, but there just wasn't a strong organizational culture. Accountability was not a very popular word. The board was not that dialed in and engaged. It had a really loyal base of donors and supporters, but I think the largest gift would maybe been a few $1,000s. So there wasn't, big kind of giving. But what it did have is just a really solid national reputation of doing some really cutting edge work, especially around youth leadership development and youth empowerment and engaging young people and helping lead the change that it impacted their lives. And that's the part that I think I love the most and that I still carry with me today.
How long were you at Oasis?
I was there 11 years.
Oh, okay.
Probably 2 years too long, if I can be honest with you. I should have, dismounted a few years earlier, but I didn't. I think I was afraid, but I was there 11 years. And, I still have an amazing Father's Day every single year, because those young people who are not so young anymore, now they're in their 30s and they're bringing their kids over to my house. They're such an important part of my life. And I've walked them down aisles when they got married and been there when their children were born. And so it's very much still a part of who I am. But I love that job.
So I want to come back at some point in the conversation to how do you leave? I think that's something that we're talking a lot about on this podcast. So after Oasis, maybe stayed a little too long, but now you're plugged more into Nashville, more into the not-for-profit world. What was next for you?
So it was interesting. I decided the last year or so at Oasis Center that I was not done being an entrepreneur. I had another startup in me. And I had seen how challenging it was for young people to get the right direction and coaching and support they needed to matriculate to college, especially in public schools where there's guidance counselor ratio is 1 to 300 or so. Kids were getting zero college counseling and admission support. So I thought, we're going to build an app. We're going to build a platform that helps school counselors better know who their students are, their strengths, their weaknesses, their hopes, and builds those relationships that weren't present. So I went out and raised some capital and hired a couple of people, and we started an ed tech company. We called it Zumo. Actually, a teenager named it after the ancient Greek god of mobile technology. And so when the teenager names your company, maybe you need to question what you're doing. But we built this platform, and it was really cool, and we were starting to get adoption. But what I didn't realize is that breaking into the ed tech space, it's just there's not a funding market for it in Nashville, but B, schools just don't have money for it.
Right.
So they wanted platforms they could use for free, and that's not a very sustainable business model.
Yeah.
I was showing it to a friend of mine who worked in the healthcare industry, and just bemoaning the fact that I think this is not going to work out. We're about to run out of money, and I'm going to have to let these folks go. and I showed it to her, and she said, you know what, this is actually pretty cool. Have you thought about doing something like this for hospitals? Because we're trying to figure out how to better communicate and narrowcast to our hospital staff. And so went scrambling back to my dev team, and we spent a few weeks reskinning and redeveloping it. I went in and pivoted from an ed tech tool to a healthcare communications tool and saved the company. And it started getting adoption, but I was lost.
Yeah.
I didn't start that company to help hospital administrators better communicate with surgeons. It was to help school counselors talk to 10th and 11th graders about their plans post-graduation. So I was miserable, but the company was growing, and revenue was coming in, and I decided it was, I either have to go do another raise or exit.
Yep.
Doing another raise was not going to be authentic, and it was not going to be fair to the people I was asking for money. So we were acquired, and I left after, it was almost 3.5 years.
Yeah.
And it was acquired, and the technology was blended into another healthcare company, and I left and went back to the nonprofit space and started at Thistle Farms.
So the pivot, I know that's an overused word at the moment, but some of that was forced on you. Some of that was having the good fortune to talk to this person who's like, oh, this could be interesting. Mm-hmm. How did you communicate the frustration that you felt of like, this is how we can maybe make the business part work and pay the investors back or whatever, keep people employed, versus where your heart is? Like that's a pretty squishy thing to be able to communicate to a bunch of people who joined you because they think this is a good thing. How did you move from being able to say that to yourself to other people?
And I had to stay for a while after that, after the exit, it was acquired. So I didn't just like peace out.
Right.
But I was very upfront and honest with them. And also there wasn't really, they didn't need me. I was leading, visioning and biz dev. There wasn't really going to be a role for me in the new organization. So that helped. But I'd been super honest with all of them.
Yeah.
And they weren't surprised. They knew my first priority was taking care of them and taking care of our investors. And I sort of put myself third. But then when I was able to, like, okay, what do I want to do? To make sure that I put myself first in that moment.
That's tough. It's a successful end, but probably not the one that you thought it was going to be.
No, it wasn't. I mean, it was bumpy as all get out landing that plane, but we landed in one piece, and everybody was good and stayed employed, and it was a win. It was a win.
I don't know exactly the timeline of this, but you were also married to an entrepreneur who is also up and down, raising money, all this kind of stuff. Once that intersection, was that helpful? Was it times you're like, can we stop talking about this?
Oh,
at the table?
More B than A. Yeah, we would have to, because Michael just, he created the Entrepreneur Center. I mean, that is his, what he thinks about 24/7. He was so helpful for me, and a lot of times normalizing the founder's journey, because it is not for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
And you're out there on a higher wire, and there's so much pressure and very little net to catch you. Mm-hmm. So he was a great rock of support, but he quickly learned that I didn't always want to hear his advice, and so we had sort of an agreement about where support,
crossed the line into something else,
and advice began. Yeah, yeah.
So you said something I think is kind of like when I really got to know you, Hal, was you moved into a place where there's a really strong founder who was still on the scene at Thistle Farms. So can you just talk a little, we were talking before we got started about the board and some of the other things. The organization had grown. I think Becca would be the first one to say it was kind of lost around some of the, so what was it like to come into a sort of iconic situation here in Nashville?
Oh, it was, and I'd known Becca for a long time. She came up to me one day after church and said, the board has told me it's time that we need to hire a CEO, and I agree, and you're going to be it. That was it.
That was the interview?
There was no job description. That was, I think that was the interview. And, I remember, I think something like, hell no, which to Becca means I'd love to. And the next thing you're showing up for work. But the fact that she zeroed in on me, and this was something that was her baby, and anybody who knows Becca Stevens knows that Thistle Farms, it's her soul, you know, and that was both reassuring and terrifying.
Yeah.
To walk in to an organization, you know, where people who look like me had just done nothing but buy, sell, and abuse every woman in the building, and how you come in behind such an iconic founder, and being, you know, a middle-aged white guy at the same time was terrifying. I was more afraid of that dynamic than the business or the nonprofit piece. That I was like, I'll figure it out, but
Can't change the other part.
you can't change the other part.
Yeah.
And it is. I mean, being you know, I've founded organizations and I've come in behind founders, and
Right.
it's you know, both sports, but two completely different you know, games. And so it was. I knew what I needed to do, and it started with, no matter how long it takes, until I have their trust, nothing's going to happen. They were like, "What's a CEO? What are you supposed to be? What do you mean? What's a CEO?" They didn't even understand
Yeah.
that part. And so if I had tried to go in there like the knight that's been brought in by the board to save this organization, it would have failed. So I just had to tread lightly and take as much time learning that culture, and just being vulnerable and transparent with them, letting them get to know me and why I was there. Took about a year and a half of just very, very, very slow walk and building relationships. And then once I knew they trusted me, it was like, let's take this place somewhere.
So how, maybe be a little more specific. It's easy to say be vulnerable and spend time, but that group of women the mistrust is high for the reasons that you just said.
100%, yeah.
Is that, you know, you go to the circle, you show up in the like, what does that really mean how did you show that? It's not just words.
No, well, it is. I mean, there's showing up, there's going to circle, the things but that felt a little more performative. For me, it was taking time to get to know them, learn their names, learn their stories, tell them my story, learn their job, go work in manufacturing, go work in fulfillment, go over and spend time at the residence, just be there, be self-deprecating, talk about what I'm not great at, ask where I need help, you know, teach me. And again, it was just that, just being an open book. And again, they knew I was not there. They didn't need saving. And we don't like to talk about saving and trafficking anyway. What they needed was help getting to the next level. They were doing fine, but I knew it could be so much better than fine.
So while you're doing that, you're also looking at the business. Again, you know, Becca's talked about it, you've talked about it, so there's nothing here, but it wasn't great. There was a lot of stuff that was fine on the surface and underneath was a little chaotic. So how do you manage getting to know these people, letting them get to know you in an authentic way, while you're also saying, like, this isn't working? How do you do that at the same time?
That was hard because you don't want to come in and start criticizing things. But I think everybody knew. There was just running jokes around, you know, nobody knew. I remember asking about margins, and they looked at me like, what is that word? But talking about how much more we could do, how many more women we could employ, the health benefits we could fund, talking about the things that, you know, that the success and the growth in sales and why we think it's important to rebrand and cut out these lines but add others. I mean, they were honestly excited about it because they knew it just had kind of plateaued at the moment, and it just needed an investment in capital that they had never thought they could raise. You know, they raised money to build homes, but it was time to raise money to put into infrastructure and buy equipment and renovate a cafe and automate some things, not being afraid of automation, that it's going to improve quality, not replace jobs. And it just took lots and lots of conversations. But honestly, they were excited. And then when the sales skyrocketed and you couldn't get into the cafe, it was just those were some fun days.
So, and you've got this sort of, I know it's not hierarchical, but you've got the other side of the equation with Becca, who is still the spiritual leader of this in every sense of that word. And you've got a board who's like, we hired this guy to get some work done. it's nice that he's wandering around in the cafe and learning fulfillment. But so how about that side where you really have to be an advocate for the people in the organization and that work, and also respond to the business demands to the board and with Becca?
Well, I learned early on what Becca's sacred cows are and what was really important to her, and hold those precious and true. Everything else is up for grabs. The fact that the women always had to be at the center of decision-making, the power of the circle, that decisions were not made, about starting with the bottom line first. It always had to be people first, customer second, bottom line third. So I got all that. That was easy. The board almost had to do a 100% rebuild.
Wow.
It was still a founder's board that had been there for really long time. There were no board terms. I remember going around and visiting with people who were saying, "Can I get off this board now? Is it my turn?" And I thought I was having to go deliver bad news, like, "Hey, I think it might be time." And they were happy to sign on the dotted line. So go out and build the new board. And that's kind of what I've had to do at Community Foundation too lately, which we can talk about. But that board was really, really trusted me. Sometimes I felt like they may have trusted me too much, and maybe should have questioned some of the decisions I made, but that's another story.
So what were the things that when you went home at night of like, oh my God, this is worse than I thought, or this is different than I thought? Where were the parts where, I won't say doubt yourself, that's probably not the right phrase, but where you just thought, oh, this is so much different than I expected?
The joy of going in there was so much different than I expected in a better way. Just the deep gratitude for every single day. The thrill of getting, your first paycheck, which you worked in a prison kitchen for 8 years, and one paycheck made more than you made in 8 years doing that same job in prison. And those moments I'll never forget. They made the hardest days almost like a blip.
Yeah.
To me, the hard part that I had to get familiar with and learn more about was just the whole e-com world, the challenges of, creating a candle that throws the perfect scent, using essential oil. I mean, it's just these things those are not, skills that you really think about much, but have a deep appreciation for how hard it is to formulate, how to break through, how to tell the story, how to expand into new markets, how to grow your retail, your wholesale. It was a lot, all while you're trying to keep everyone clean and sober for one more day.
Yeah.
So making a really high quality product with a really challenging workforce, that was tough.
Yeah.
That was tough.
So you were at Thistle Farms until
I was there 7 years.
7 years. So long time.
It was a long time, and I could have stayed. I could still.
But it seemed
there.
like, unlike Oasis, where you said you maybe stayed a year, it's from the outside it looked like, man, that feels right. Just from the little bit that I knew. Did you feel smarter about when to leave?
I did.
Yeah,
I did. I wanted to, and I think once, knowing when to dismount is such an important role for any leader, but especially a nonprofit. And what I see happen over and over and over again, and I did at Oasis Center, was, you start getting bored. So you start inventing new ideas and new programs and new things that we're going to do, not because the staff wants it, but because you need a new challenge. It's the wrong idea to create a new thing. And that's where you can easily, mission creep and all the things that go with it. I felt that way at Thistle Farms. Sales were strong. We were ending the year with a profit. Staff morale was really good. The cafe was humming. I could have continued to ride it out, but I knew it was time to leave. I knew it was time for it to go into maintenance mode for a little bit and sort of catch up from all the growth. I'm not a maintenance mode kind of person. So I said, now's the time. Now's the time. And I also knew just where I was, my own age and everything. I've got one more big hill I want to climb.
Right.
I need to leave now if I'm going to do it.
So did you leave Thistle Farms not knowing what the next thing was?
I left Thistle Farms thinking I was going to run for mayor.
That's right. Oh, I'd forgotten about that. And you were...
I was thinking, I didn't leave Thistle Farms to go in the Community Foundation. I left Thistle Farms to, look for a campaign manager.
So I was honored enough to be one of the people you talked to as you're going through that. I know you talked to, I'll say hundreds. I don't know. It might have been that. You wound up at the Communities Foundation, so you know how that ends. But what did you learn about yourself and this community that made you say, that's not the right time for me, or I'm not the right person for that role anymore?
At Thistle Farms, you mean?
For mayor.
For mayor, okay.
For mayor.
Ooh, yes. I am one of the books that shaped me, period. Was a little book that was given to me many years ago when Lamar Alexander was one of the founders of corporate childcare, called Let Your Life Speak by Parker Palmer. And it's all about the meaning of the word vocation and how to find vocation within us. And vocation comes from, listening to that voice within. It's not listening to the voices outside there. It's that deep listening to the voice within. All the voices outside were telling me, run. You've got this. You can do it. I'm on board. What can I do to help? But the voice within was like, man, I don't think this is for me. I don't know if I want a job where I wake up every single day wondering what's going to come at me today. And I knew Nashville's just grown so much, and the challenges that we face today are really hard. And I just felt like it was more than I wanted to take on. And I woke up when, I was 2 weeks from my launch. I've still got boxes of Cato for Mayor stickers in my closet at home. And I'm like, I'm doing this for the wrong reason. And so I sent out a really early morning email to everybody who thought they were coming to a kickoff in a couple of weeks and let them know why. And immediately got the replies back. There were a few people who were upset, but most people understood. I made the right decision for me, listening to that voice deep within and not out there.
Any second guesses about that now? None at all.
None at all.
Doesn't seem like it, but
none at all. And then shortly after that, the phone rang, and it was the search committee for the Community Foundation. I knew they had been looking for a CEO, but I wasn't quite sure I was the right one, so I went in for it. But no, there are, and Freddie is a good friend. We talk frequently, and I love that. So many of the things that were calling me to run, I'm getting to work on now just from a different seat at the table. And no, I'm where I'm supposed to be. He's where he's supposed to be.
Yeah. So as someone who has been occasionally funded by the Communities Foundation, but not super involved in it, right? So some distance from my perspective. It's this big, dominant, wealthy thing out there that has a lot of power in Nashville. You obviously knew about it in different ways. So what's the delta between what you thought you were going to end up doing and how you spent your time? Because I want to finish this part of the Communities Foundation because you are involved in some pretty tricky things right now in Nashville that probably are hard to navigate from the Communities Foundation perspective because you got a lot of voices at the table.
Yeah, you do. I mean, so the community foundations have been around for over 100 years, and for the majority of that time, they have operated as a very trusted charitable bank where people could open funds, endowed funds, scholarship funds, in the last 30 years, donor advised funds, and then have that community foundation serve as the bank to steward and get those grants out. That business model is rapidly sunsetting. The growth of commercial funds like Fidelity and Schwab, and now GoFundMe now has a donor advised fund with 0%, zero fee, zero minimum balance. So it's just that part has become very, very commoditized. To me, the value of a community foundation is in our role as civic leader and convener, and how we bring people together to work on issues that no one grant can ever solve. And I think that's the role that excites me the most, and that's the role that's needed in this town right now.
So you came to Communities Foundation in 2022?
I started officially December of 23.
23, okay.
I'm sorry, December 22, and so it's been 2.5 years.
2.5 years. Did you know that when you came, that the business model was getting commoditized, or did... No.
I had a sense, I knew that the community foundation as charitable bank model needed to change. And hadn't had great experience with community foundation at, Thistle Farms or Oasis Center. And I was like, there's more. It should be doing so much more than it is. But then when I started really looking around at other community foundations, because there's over 900 in the United States. And so there's some really, really wonderful ones that I've been modeling off of. And seeing the different roles that they were playing in the community, because I do think the most powerful question you can ask in any room is, what can we do together that none of us can do on our own? And that's the question I ask over and over and over and over and over again.
So the woman who was there before you, I don't think she was the founder, but
she was the founder.
Well, she was
yeah.
the founder.
So
I didn't know that.
I've come in behind founders. Yeah.
Interesting. And some of so the business model is changing. You have a board that you have to somehow change around?
I came in, I inherited a board of 62 people. It's the largest community foundation board in the United States. And so
that's not an honor you won.
That's not a good thing. And I think they recognized that the governance model was broken too. So we first, 6-7 months was bringing people together, rewrite the bylaws, shrinking it down to about 20.
Wow. Okay.
Ultimately, we'll get it to 15 to 17. And so that was a big lift. Just redefining, where we're going and creating a new shared North Star that the staff could trust and buy into was another, big lift that we're still working on every single day. And then the final thing is going to just be, probably as long as I'm in this role, is how are we building and earning trust? Trust with our fund holders, trust with our nonprofit partners, and trust with the community at large in an era where trust is just evaporating faster than you can say the word.
So the community foundation seems super healthy financially. Lots of resources. You built this beautiful new building that's turned into a beehive of activity, which is very cool. So you're starting from a different place in a way. Like, you've got this strong foundation, even though the business model is changing. And in Nashville in the last few months, issues around immigration, which have always been here, right? Or at least for the last 10 or 15 years. And it seems to me that the Community Foundation is stepping into that in a different way. So how do you personally navigate that? Because that's something I get a sense that you care about. But also insert the Community Foundation. That's kind of new. How did you navigate your way through that?
Well, I mean, and I told the interview team this when I went in. The most important word on the name is community and not foundation. You got to have foundation's important too.
Yeah.
They're, can't have one without the other. But if we focus more on foundation than community, we're not going to grow. We're not going to build the trust. So the community is a community. It is everybody. And I've always, felt like empathy was one of my superpowers. And I think it's just that growing up as feeling like the outsider that could never really quite fit in. I've always had been drawn to the margins, to those who are standing on the margins. And I think that empathy fuels action because it's not about what's right for me. It's, what's right for us. For immigration, for example, I knew that Community Foundation has not done a whole lot to support immigrant and refugees in our community. And I'd had some hard conversations with leaders at Turk and Connexion and others to we need to do better. We had been thinking about a mutual aid fund to support immigrants for some time, but when the ICE raids hit and the phone rang, I felt like we need to do this. We need to do this now. I knew it was going to, choose courage over comfort. I was going to get some darts thrown at me either way.
Yeah.
But it was the right thing to do. And, I had somebody call me up and said, I'm just disappointed that you chose a side. I was like, well, if by a side you mean making sure that someone has a home, is not evicted, that has food, is able to get to work, that's what our mission is. And that's how we build community. So it's sad that that's considered political.
That aside, yeah. Do you feel like this particular issue at this moment is kind of an inflection point for the Community Foundation to say to the community, we are approaching things differently now?
Well, that we are a community foundation that's here for everyone. That we're heading into August is Black Philanthropy Month, and we will be sharing a whole lot of stories and news and spotlights on Black philanthropists in town and some of the Black-led nonprofit organizations that are just doing remarkable work, most of whom people have never heard of.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's just, we've got to be relevant and open and accessible to all Nashvillians. And it's going to mean sometimes people are not happy with us, and may think we're too woke now, but this is who we are.
Yeah. Have you had any backlash from fund holders or others who are like, that's not me anymore. I don't want to be a part of this?
Yes,
Yeah.
I've had a few.
Sure.
I've had a few,
few.
call and say, I don't think I want to have my fun here anymore. And I understand.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've all said, folks, open up funds because of the courage
this.
in taking a stand. So
Great point.
Yeah.
Great point. So I want to transition a little bit to something you said earlier. You just mentioned again about fitting in, but being on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
About how to leave, because you've said stayed too long, did it right, and now you're in what might be your last big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I want to finish that kind of three-part question about if you were talking to people coming into the not-for-profit world, whether from the for-profit or straight out of college or high school, advice for them. So we'll take it in three parts.
Yeah.
How have you kept that sense alive, Hal? Because I can imagine as a high school or middle school kid feeling that, and then you're not on the outside anymore. Like you're integral to this community. So it'd be easy to lose that and think, oh, this is how it is now. How do you keep that alive?
From the outside looking in, Hal's got, Hal still wakes up every day struggle with his own imposter syndrome, and those voices that harken back to, me riding my bike around Nashville in the 70s with no friends, still, it's amazing how those experiences shape you, Here I am, just turned 60, and there are days I feel like that kid on the bike.
Wow.
With no friends. But I'm riding for the other kids behind me that feel the same way. And so just staying really, really, really grounded. I think, like I said, empathy is always going to try to be one of my superpowers. But to me, it's, the lesson that I learned at Oasis Center many years ago. Nobody cares how much you know till they know how much you care.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've got to live that every room I show up in.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. That's a powerful thing to think about. The kid on the bike, that's quite an image. Yeah. So what about the leaving? So you're 2.5 years in, lots of time I can imagine still at the Communities Foundation. So I don't want to jump the gun, but at some point in the next couple of years, your board is going to say, what's the plan? Have you started thinking about that? What you want that to look like, what the off-ramp is?
Gosh, I haven't.
No?
No, I still feel like I'm on my on-ramp.
Right.
I haven't, because I've been there 2.5 years now. And, year one was just trying to figure out, what are we doing? What is this community foundation? And then year two was, okay, I get it. It's about serving as a community leader and a convener and being willing to step up, to tables that others are not. But also how we can do a better job braiding just philanthropy in general. I meet once a month with the leaders of some of the largest foundations in town. I love that meeting to talk about what's going on, what the opportunities are that we could do together and learning from them. So my best years at Community Foundation are ahead of me.
Yeah.
In the next couple of years, I'll be thinking about that. But right now, I'm still thinking about, do I have the right team in place? Is our strategic framework right? Are we measuring the right things? Why aren't we growing more? What do we do? So I'm there.
What does growth look like in a community foundation setting? The obvious thing is funds that you're managing, but it sounds like that's maybe focusing on the foundation, not the community part.
Exactly. And it's hard because most community foundations, they talk about assets under management. And that's important, but if that's all you got to talk about, man, that's sad. So for us, yes, we do have to continue growing. Last year we grew almost 32% in a year. It was a phenomenal year. Money follows trust. and I think people are starting to trust us again.
Yeah.
But right now it's okay, what are the big things that we want to grow on? How, my next big push is partnering with the Chamber of Commerce and the Mayor's Office to move the unified housing strategy forward. How are we going to get 9,000 housing units built a year? We've launched the Nashville Early Education Coalition. How are we going to partner with the state and others across the state to address new policies that need to be put in place, and so that childcare can be both more affordable to working parents, but also not the lowest paid profession out there. It's crazy that you'll spend more sending your child to UT. You'll spend less sending your child to UT as a freshman than you would if you were putting that child in a 1-year-old classroom in Nashville. And yet at the same time, the people working in that 1-year-old classroom, are some of the lowest paid folks in town. So we're looking at that. And then the final thing that, we're really working with is how do we redefine cross-sector collaboration in Nashville? Mm-hmm. It's the only way we're going to address the big issues, but Nashville has become so siloed over the years. And so working with the mayor on how we bring those silos down around workforce development, around, better neighborhoods, around educational success and health outcomes. So just some small things.
You should wrap that up in a
yeah, we got it. So. Yeah, give me a minute.
So actually, that's kind of a great place for the third question, Hal, and that is, you've got a lot of people moving to Nashville. Mm-hmm. You got a lot of, I think, interest in some of these problems, but there's also at the same time, like, it seems to me a little bit more of what's in it for me. I'm here for the money. I'm here for the power. Like, it's an interesting time to think about what it means to be a not-for-profit leader, whether that's from your side or from my side. Mm-hmm. So when people come to you and say, I'm thinking about coming into this world to work or be a board member, are there a few things that you go to, like, you should keep X, Y, and Z in mind?
Mm-hmm. I still get at least 2 or 3 times a month people wanting to come and sit and talk to me about an idea for a new nonprofit they want to start. And those are hard. I'm listening. They're telling me their dreams, and then I have to turn and say, here's why this is not a good idea.
Or why they're 10 more ahead of you.
Or have you thought about that? And, and inevitably I get the pushback, but I have to, deliver that message. And then I get the joy of working with folks who have, are starting to think about philanthropy in a real way. They've had quite a career, and now it's like, how do I give it away?
Yeah.
So there are those conversations. And then the third are with those existing nonprofit leaders that are just like, we need help. Mm-hmm. We need this from philanthropy. And so all of the foundation leaders, not just Community Foundation, we're all like, what does support need to look like in the next few years as federal government disinvests more and more in the social safety net in this community? We need to start, we have a fund for mergers and collaborations. We need to put more money in that, try to encourage more nonprofit mergers. It's just going to take a lot of different small acts to keep the safety net held together. And I feel like I'm sort of the switchboard operator for that. A lot of people call us, philanthropic quarterback.
Right.
Pick whatever, image you want. But I'm honored, and I think 20-something years of leading nonprofit organizations, I've got a certain level of trust with the nonprofit CEOs that I wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah.
Been there. I've done that job. I know how hard it is,
So last question. You've given us a little more time. Been generous with that. You said you just turned 60. I'm a year older than you. I turned 61. Lots of times the last question in these kind of conversations is, where do you want to be in 20 years? In 20 years, what do you want to remember about right now? Like, what is it about this moment, Hal, that when you're 80, you want to look back and say, that person, that event, that experience still matters to me in 20 years?
I want, to look back and be proud of the fact that I worked my ass off to try to hold our social fabric together, and to try to create space and the trust and just the room where we can come together and work on issues together. And we don't all have to agree. We don't have to vote it the same way. We don't have to worship the same way. We don't have to believe, but we can come together. It's so important right now because we can't philanthropy our way out of any of the challenges that we face. There's no elected official that can fix this. There's no one nonprofit. There's no one business leader. We can only do it together. And I want people to look back at this moment that the Community Foundation understood that, and they knew how to set a table and bring us together to stay focused on the same shared North Star.
Right. Well, Hal, thanks. Couldn't have asked for a better conversation. Really appreciate you joining today.
Okay, appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us on the Repurpose Podcast with me, Buddy Teaster. You can follow the show at buddyteaster.com/podcast, and you can learn more about what we do at s4s.org. If you like this content, please share, rate, and review our episodes wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And until next time, I ask you to ask yourself, what's your why? And how will discovering that help give your life a repurpose?